In 2004, I had been experiencing pain in my neck, and after going to the doctor and going to an ENT, we realized that there was a very small tumor in my parotid gland, which is one of your salivary glands. It was a very rare cancer of the secretory cells called adenoid cystic carcinoma. My husband Jeff and I had 4 young boys at the time. We were already in over our heads long before we had cancer, so this just made things much more complicated.
We were scared. You're looking around for answers, and with a rare cancer, it's particularly hard because those answers aren't well developed. And so we felt that in order to make advances, we really needed to bring attention and some funding to the area. And so that's really why we started the Adenoid Cystic Carcinoma Research Foundation. After that, I was invited to join the FNIH PACT Executive Committee to learn about the amazing advances in immunotherapy and to try and give a patient perspective on how important those advances are.
The field of immuno-oncology is probably the fastest growing treatment field in oncology right now. It really looks at a much broader perspective of how do you actually use drugs to have a patient's immune system remember that it's supposed to seek out things that aren't right within the body and then help to eliminate those.
When you try to apply a new approach like immunotherapy, you'd like to make it just as precise as possible. The only way you get there is to have a large experience, a database with lots of attempts at this and seeing when it worked and when it didn't.
PACT started under the Cancer Moonshot. It actually started as 2 separate projects. One that NCI was putting together called the CIMAC CIDC Network, and then PACT, the Partnership for Accelerating Cancer Therapies, which the private sector was working with FNIH to design, and we merged them.
This brings together the pharmaceutical companies and the academic institution investigators to make discoveries about what is critical to immuno-oncology research today.
It's definitely very important to combine the private sector and the public sector together.
Academic medicine brings its innovation to the partnership. Industry brings the nuts and bolts of how you take a discovery and make it into a real product and then produce it at scale. And then we as regulators that make sure it meets certain standards and also make sure that it stays safe over time.
We worked with NCI and 17 companies came to the table during a design phase. We put together a partnership that essentially standardizes how assays will be deployed in immuno-oncology trials.
An assay is a way of testing some component of the immune system in this case.
There are 4 centers, Stanford, Dana-Farber, MD Anderson, and Mount Sinai, that are working together to create data from samples collected from clinical trials.
I think each center demonstrated that they were able to dive deeply into really diverse areas of immuno-oncology and find new, fresh insights.
When you get a dramatic positive response, that's fantastic. But what about those other circumstances where it should have worked, but it didn't?
20 to 30% of patients get really great responses, sometimes full remission. The problem is there's at least 70 to 80% of patients that these drugs don't work in.
We need to understand in detail what are the biomarkers that correlate with a positive outcome.
Biomarkers are essentially what we can measure to tell what is driving their disease or their tumor.
The hope is that by amassing these type of measures, we can link an individual's molecular or phenotypic profile to the right type of treatment.
The benefit of the immunotherapies is they can be added on, potentially helping to cure patients without adding on much, if any, toxicity.
All of the data that we've been generating is going to be publicly available through the future data commons that is being built.
Sharing the data, not only within the consortium, but also outside of it,
is really one of its superpowers.
There have been a few key milestones in terms of how the partnership have really been able to give back to the scientific community.
The first is the harmonization.
This is very important because the end goal is to cross-trial comparison from the different laboratory.
We've started analyzing more than 2,000 patients and 9,000 specimens for a variety of different methodologies.
There have been as many as 125 publications that have been acknowledged as arising from the network.
The unparalleled data resource that we are generating for the field of immuno-oncology researchers is the most important thing that we are putting forward.
It's actually been with a feeling of accomplishment and gratitude and excitement that as a network, we've really come together and that we've made so much progress in terms of the science.
I've never seen anything as ambitious as this in terms of the amount of cooperation, the amount of people involved, and the potential of benefit that it could have on cancer treatment.
With adenoid cystic carcinoma, it's always looming. So for the rest of my life, I will get scanned.
When she's living longer, living better, that has immeasurable impact on our family. I'm just so optimistic about what the PAC partnership is going to bring to individual families and whole communities.
All that any of us have is hope. And so seeing this group of companies, academics, government agencies, patients working together, it is so astounding, and it gives all of us a lot of hope.